Hey everybody, Dr. Rob Silverman here. I'm with fertility expert Jessica Preston. Jessica, let's just get right into it. 15 to 20% of couples in the US experience inability to conceive. The percentage is growing rapidly. Up to 40% of the cases are due to male infertility. As you told me before, about 1 in 5, 19% globally are affected by the infertility. What is going on? What is infertility and why?
And it's so many questions. Thank you so much for all of that. So it's multifactorial. And I think when people have any of these scary moments like infertility, because we have this dream and we have this natural right to procreate, right? We have the right to have children. So when we start seeing that that is questioned in us, or we are questioning it within ourselves, then we say why, and it gets very scary. And people start looking outside of the box, and we should. So a lot of this, when male factor, we're looking at testosterone is lower, so we have decreased sperm production. We have decreased morphology and motility, decreased ability for sperm to swim, decreased ability to have increase in abnormal shapes of sperm themselves. That's male factor. DNA fragmentation, where the DNA themselves of the sperm are problematic, so you can't conceive. So that's male factor. Female factor, we're having a lot of issues with hormonal dysregulation. We're seeing that people aren't having the right estrogen progesterone ratios. There's an increase in PCOS, endometriosis. We're seeing a marked increase in unexplained infertility, but all of this is a why. Why are those things happening? So when we see that that's what's happening, male factor is on the rise, female factor is on the rise, and we end up going to our doctor and say, what's going on? And then you're 1 in 5, you're 19% of people are unable to conceive for these reasons. Then we go to IVF. And we try to conceive this way, which is also decreasing in effectiveness, less than 30% effective at this point in time per cycle. So what is the underlying why? What is our root cause of those abnormalities occurring, of the hormonal dysregulation and dysfunction and the sperm issues we're seeing in men? So now we have to take a look at metabolic factors, inflammation factors, environmental factors, epigenetic factors.
So interestingly enough, fertility begins to decline at age 35 in a female. Now they've got something that really speaks to what you say. It's called the 30-30-10 rule. 30% are attributed to issues with the women, 30% attributed to issues with the men. And thank you. I'm happy you started with the guys, because a lot of my friends think that they're out of this equation. They call that a couple, gentlemen, men and women point together. And 30% is the combination, if you could run with that, of the male and the female. And 10% is etiology unknown. How do you address that?
So we do couples work almost exclusively because there is always a male factor. When I was in clinic, so I spent 20 years in OBGYN working with infertility conventionally, and I wouldn't actually do any ovulation induction in women until I had a semen analysis from their partner. Because why am I giving the woman medication when we might be doing this for a number of months and we don't know if there is a male factor? Also, remember, even if there is a male factor, it doesn't rule out a female factor. If there's a female factor, it doesn't rule out a male factor. We're seeing a dramatic rise in both couples having an issue when it comes to infertility. So personally, we address both male and female factor. We see, have you been assessed at this point in time? Have you had a semen analysis? Have you had a workup as a female as well? And then we go from there.
Give me your 5 biggest reasons. And you listed them before, but give me your 5 biggest reasons for infertility today.
So this is going to be, there are so many ways I can do 5 different reasons. Let's start with this one. I have 3 categories. One is structural issue, like tubes are blocked or varicocele in a male. The other is diagnoses like diabetes or a metabolic syndrome or a PCOS. And then the third factor is when you have a subclinical diagnosis, like you're just below the radar when it comes to having a diagnosis, and that's not unexplained infertility. So when it comes to that, that's over 30% right there, is that unexplained place. So we can take those areas and we can notch them down a little bit too. So structural, I said, varicocele, tubes blocked, other issue that may be structural. diagnoses. Those are separate as well. And then the unexplained is more of your hormones aren't quite in the right range, but they're not out of range for a diagnosis to put you in that third category. So those are areas as well.
That's structural. So a varicocele, nobody
Mhm.
knows this, never had the
Ah,
conversation. I have a varicocele. I had a ligation at 26.
okay.
So, varicocele, bag of worms in your testicle, your sac, if you will. Uh,
Yeah.
Not very pleasant, but I get it. Structural, you talked about tubes, but wouldn't endometriosis also be part of a structure?
So endometriosis we have more in the diagnosis category than in the structural, unless endometriosis is blocking the tubes, then yes, you have both. And very honestly, if you're in one of those categories, you're probably in another. So it's not we're giving a primary diagnosis, we find it, we're going to label it, and then you're going to be in that basket, right? That's where you're going to be. So there can frequently be, you can be in more than one basket. So many people have that subfertility space or that space
Hmm.
where it's a underdiagnosis, the unexplained infertility, but you're just early PCOS or early endometriosis as it is. You're just not diagnosable yet. You're not fitting in the category yet. So that can be that. But to go back to varicocele, so the interesting thing about varicocele, if people have them, because they're so common, with male
Hmm.
factor, as you said, up to 40% of infertility is a male factor component. And so they go and they get assessed for varicocele, and then they're graded, like a lot of things in medicine are. So if you have a mild varicocele, the question is, should we even surgically repair? And the bottom line when it comes to varicoceles is, are they even improving male factor infertility? And it's not there, the outcomes aren't great for varicoceles for improving infertility, but it's something to do. Okay, and that's a conventional medicine method as well. Like, what else can we do? We find the varicocele, so let's repair it and hope that we have some success. And that is done, that is performed. But what if not? Now we have to go to the other issues of, okay, if that's not enough, how are we going to now improve your testosterone to improve your sperm count, your morphology, your motility?
It's interesting that varicocele, like I said, I never revealed it to anybody because it's never been a conversation other than with my urologist. It was 32 years ago that they did the procedure. So I guess anything they did then is considered antiquated now. Um, Genetically missing a valve or a faulty valve, a little too much blood flow, and makes the testicles too hot and, like you said, kills the sperm. But there was something interesting in the diagnosis. There seemed to be a commonality: PCOS, diabetes. Looks like high blood sugar, insulin
Mm,
resistance, the most
yes.
inflammatory thing. Can you take the baton and run with that a little bit?
Sure. I'm not sure how we can go anywhere we want with it. I think that resistance can actually be an isolated factor when it comes to infertility. You don't even have to have any of these other aspects. And I know as patients, because I was an infertility patient myself. And so when you're looking for and working in the field, I'm looking for all of those things. What am I diagnosed with? And insulin resistance itself can be independent of all of your other factors where it can be related. It's also related to PCOS with insulin resistance. So we always, for our own selves, like in my program and what we do, we address it immediately in all people. Sugar is an issue. It is a major issue when it comes to infertility, not just because you're looking at sugar and you're looking at diabetes, because diabetes is a metabolic disorder that does implicate subfertility or infertility. So we do want to take care of that. But beneath that, below that, deep down, where people aren't looking, is that insulin resistance. So we're going to address that immediately as well in
Really
everyone.
amazing. So it really begs the question. This is a fascinating field. What drove you in to wanting to study and be a fertility expert?
Oh, thank you for that. So I'll try to make this one quick. I had infertility myself, and I ended up pregnant with twins. And then I was preterm labor at 24 weeks, delivered at 32 weeks, two 3-pound babies. Struggled a lot. I didn't have any health problems. I was an unexplained infertility patient.
Mhm.
And so I ended up pregnant with Clomid, which is a pill that you take for 5 days. So after my babies were born, I struggled a bit. My son, I had him assessed for autism at 18 months, and I had my daughter had impulse control issues. So very fortunately, I was trained in functional medicine, so I reversed those factors for my children in their healthy senior year of school right now. They're raising me quite well, like high GPA students with jobs, socialized in extracurriculars. My son just got his Eagle Scout. My daughter's a cheerleader. Like they're just amazing, amazing, well-adjusted, healthy, happy children. And so when I was back then in that space of knowing that torment and torture as a parent with two kids that would potentially be special needs, and I reversed that, I was on a mission to reverse the special needs that I saw potentially in my children. And so I thought, but I worked in OBGYN my whole career. So I thought, well, you've never worked with kids. Why would you work with kids? And so I said to myself, just prevent it in the first place. So I worked on optimizing the egg and sperm health, the factors that I know are contributing to autism and neurodevelopmental disorders. So those things that are like metabolic issue or inflammatory issue, which are contributed to by your lifestyle. So I started making a lot of changes for people, and in optimizing their egg and sperm health, reversed infertility in my population. So that's how I ended up in this space. And so my entire goal is to get people the baby of their dreams, but I want it to be the healthy baby of their dreams. And so we have started working with this program. We've been around for 2 years, 2.5 years now, time flies, where we're helping people conceive, but we're making healthy babies and we're tracking those babies so that we can make sure that we can see that that trajectory of autism does tick down.
Well, you brought it up. So many common fears of the rising rates of autism. How is this directly related to infertility? And give some of those numbers.
Yeah. So let's talk first about autism rates. So when I'm looking at helping people make healthy babies, we're not just talking about autism. We're talking about autism, ADHD, blindness, cerebral palsy, a lot of these other neurodevelopmental disorders that we're seeing to be about I think it's 16% of the population at this point in time as a general, 16 to 19% of the population as a general found in study, a general conglomerate of those neurodevelopmental disorders. So when we're looking at those stats, when it comes to autism, let's just talk autism. In 2000, the rate was 1 in 150. One baby out of 150 babies born were autistic. In 2010, 1 in 68 babies were autistic. In 2020, 1 in 36 babies were autistic. And the trajectory for 2050 is 1 in 2 babies to have autism. So let's just talk about what that means for a minute. Who's taking care of those babies? Parents. How are we going to do that? We're going to go back down to a one-parent house or a one working parent household. And then that other parent, that struggle that we have, the stress and the implication on the parent's health, the way that they're really tanking, depression, anxiety, other problems that we're seeing that are happening younger and younger in parents of children with autism and other neurodevelopmental disorders. So we're seeing this in the parents and the children. Where are we going to be as a society in 2050 if we're going to have 1 in 2 babies with autism? When we as parents die, who's going to take care of our babies? Who's going to be taking care of the societal, the GDP? I think about the economy a lot. How are we going to manage in this space? So we need to make a change. So when we're looking at those numbers, we'll talk about those to start. So when we looked at those numbers and we're looking at basically, 17, 19%, and then I started looking at our rate of infertility is 19%. There's this correlation here of autism and infertility. So we start reading about and start studying and researching about rates of autism in those people that have infertility. And there is actually a slight increased risk of autism in those with infertility. So there was a great study that was done in November of 2023. It was a retrospective analysis, 1.3 million babies in Ontario, Canada, that were, it was a retrospective analysis. So they were looking at these babies, I think through the age of 9 or 10, and they diagnosed autism as early as 18 months. And they did find those with subfertility. So let's define subfertility and fertility real quick. So infertility is when you've gone a full year trying to get pregnant and you haven't gotten pregnant. Now, subfertility and infertility are now being used interchangeably, those terms, but subfertility is really reserved for those people who haven't gone into their doctor and they've gotten a diagnosis of infertility. So if you are out there in the world, you've been trying for a year, but you haven't gone to the doctor yet, and trying means having sex at regular intervals in the middle of your month when you're ovulating every month for a year. That's trying, not trying once every 3 months. It's once a month for 12 months. And that's where that diagnosis is, where that of infertility. If you've done that and you haven't gone to the doctor, you're called subfertility. So what we have found from this retrospective analysis is that those of us with subfertility are at a slight increased risk of babies with autism. This does make perfect sense from the reading that we've done, from the studying that we've done, from looking at the factors that you and I have just discussed about, insulin resistance and diabetes, and looking at inflammatory and metabolic syndrome or metabolic issues in mom and dad. We can't forget dad because it does take both. So now we're seeing really is a risk in this space of subfertility. Now, the good news when it comes to IVF clinics, ovulation induction, which is the work that I used to do, that is not the increased risk. It's not from IVF. I think a lot of people think that there is a risk from the infertility treatments themselves, but the risk is the subfertility itself. So now we have to look at us. Why? What is the underlying cause of the subfertility? And that's where we get into the epigenetic stuff for babies. So we'll talk about that too. So we're looking at metabolic stuff for mom and dad. We're looking at inflammatory stuff for mom and dad. We're looking at hormonal imbalance for mom and dad. And those are things we need to correct. So remember that stat we said about autism. 1 in 36 in 2020 babies were born with autism. Those aren't even those diagnosed with infertility. Those aren't even diagnosed with subfertility. That's the general population. The general population has an autism risk in 2020 of 1 in 36. The general population is going to have an autism risk of 1 in 2 in 2050. Why are we waiting for people to be diagnosed with subfertility or infertility to fix the problem? So what we've done is we've developed a healthy baby masterclass, a healthy baby program where people can come in and learn how to reverse those issues, how to fix those core key components that drive your insulin resistance, that drive your metabolic issues and your inflammatory issues, so that we can negate that risk to begin with.
So it sounds again like this overriding theme that we talk about so much on a podcast, functional medicine, root cause resolution, is lifestyle oriented without question, can be corrected through specific tenets of lifestyle. And as a little FYI for everybody watching, autism, especially in the children, 90% of autism in a 2019 study was attributed to gut problems. New study came out, 80 to 85%. Minimal was able to be diagnosed through stool analysis. So again, really harping on the gut. Don't want to steal any of your thunder, but you put together this masterclass. You have experts in fertility. So I have a couple, and I send them to you. They've told me they have subfertility. What are they going to go through with you? What diagnostic? What training? And give some of the options they can have for treatment so they have that healthy, happy baby you talked about.
Great. Yes, thank you for that. So we don't start with testing because everybody has the same core issues, which is, it comes down to like 85% of the people have the same core issues. And what we're trying to do is make things affordable so that everybody has access. We know that that's an issue. So we do have a very high level program that if we find that you have some issues with infertility, that does have all of the components to it that is more pricey. And we don't like to start there, especially, well, if you come to us and you've failed IVF a number of times, then we would definitely recommend that because that's what we will need. But in the early parts, when you're just saying, I want to have a healthy baby, and I saw this so much in clinic, I'm getting married in 6 months and we want to try right away. I want to have a healthy baby. What should I be doing right now? And so we do. We have a supplement. We have a supplement line where we have a specific probiotic that is formulated for gut health for mom, so that we can decrease those risks. So we have that already. So if mom already shows up and she has, and we do have a lot of questions and an intense history about, do you have gut issues? Because that might not be enough. But in our early subfertility, or we're just trying to have a healthy baby space, it really is enough. We start with that. You learn about, we have a nutrition plan that is anti-inflammatory, low glycemic, It reverses insulin resistance. We reversed a diabetic, and we didn't even know she was diabetic because she didn't know when she came to us. And she was in our program, this program I'm talking about, for about 6 weeks, 7 weeks, couldn't get pregnant for, I think it was close to a year, and just was looking for something to do. And the second month, we reversed her long 70 to 90-day cycles. We made her a 30-day cycle in 6 weeks. And then the next month, she reached out and she said, I don't know why my cycle is so long. It was, and she was pregnant. But then we found out that in the work, and she worked hard. You have to buy into what we're doing. So we are there to support you in that. But our nutrition program is exactly that. We can get you to that space. So everybody gets our nutrition program and then we talk through what all of that means. We have a stress management program. My nutritionist is also a pharmacist with a master's in nutrition and a 2-year certification in mindfulness. And so she helps us learn about eating patterns and behaviors. And so we have a lot of information in that regard. So we can help people feel better about the choices they make and feel better when they make bad choices so that we can get them back on the bus, right? Get them back on the wagon and get them back to where they need to be. We have a massive stress management program. Autonomic nervous system regulation is key. It is our number one priority because, as you know, if our autonomic nervous system, if we're in fight or flight, we are not in rest and digest, gut. So there we are again with our gut. It doesn't matter what we do to our gut. If our stress isn't managed, it's going to go back to the way that it was. So we need to make sure our autonomic nervous system is well balanced so that we can address your gut, get the appropriate nutrition. Sleep is the pillar at the basis of all health. Without having our appropriate sleep, then we're not going to be able to do all of these other things. And our nutrition choices, our ghrelin, our leptin, all of these parts that are biochemicals that people aren't realizing that are saying eat more carbs when we're sleepy because we haven't gotten good rest. We actually have a biochemical response in our body that almost forces our hand to grab something bad. And so we help you find a way to be able to sleep better. So we did nutrition, stress, sleep. We do exercise and the right movement because what happens with exercise when you're trying to conceive, especially in women, is if you're vigorously exercising too much, you're actually having a cortisol spike, which is going to make your progesterone go down. And so we have to actually restructure your exercise. So we have a lot of real high level like Olympian types. We don't have any Olympians in our program right now, but we have marathon runners and people that over-exercise. So we have to get their stress managed without it being managed by their exercise. A lot of runners are managing their stress and anxiety with running, and I understand that, but you're also you're being detrimental towards your fertile health. And so we have to help those people, and we do that through our mindfulness and working with them in that regard so we can get them to have an appropriate exercise routine to balance their hormones appropriately. And our last part is relationships, because what happens when it comes to relationship work, when you find out that you're having a problem getting pregnant, you start looking at your spouse in one of a couple of ways. One is, oh my God, you might leave me because I'm not giving you a baby. And that is a real thing. I had that. I was the problem, not my partner. So I was the one thinking, man, maybe you want to be with someone else that can give you babies because this might not be working out for me. So I'm a retreater. So I retreated in myself and we're going to fix that. I'm going to fix it myself. I did, but that didn't help my relationship. So the other thing that we can do, and for male factor, it's so emasculating. So what happens in what can be a loving relationship, trying is fun for 1 month, and then trying is trying. It is no fun anymore. You're doing this for a purpose. You're just having sex at a certain time. It's on demand. It's the way that it needs to be in order to have this baby. But after a while, you start losing that intimacy and eroticism. So we work in intimacy and eroticism. We teach intro to tantra. We get people breathing together. We have people with eye gazing. We do this in a very safe space, in a safe way. There's nothing R-rated in this space. It's just helping people connect in their intimacy space. We have laughter. We bring in laughter. We bring in all kinds of connection communication, like nonviolent communication and imago dialogue, so that we can have those relationships get very strong and tight.
So it's a multimodal approach covering vast different facets of, let's call it the healing process and the optimization process. No test. Everybody is in a restorative mode, a preventative mode, not in a reactorial mode. Interesting. Right. So
Right.
I hear my friend in the background, the little guy, you can't see him,
Yeah.
and he's having a little trouble getting over it. So he understands if there's, something going on with his wife and it doesn't work. And he can actually get the idea of maybe there's something wrong with him, but he cannot get around the idea of the combination of that individual man and woman being 1/3 of the problem. So could you elaborate on that and explain for the people who just don't understand that it is a combination, it is a mix between a man and a woman. It's just not sperm on egg, if you will, or sperm.
Yeah. Well, in doing that, there's one factor I'd love to talk about. It's a little complicated. It's called imprinting, and this is an epigenetic concern.
Love to hear that. Love to hear that.
So, yeah, I mean, and there are so many ways we could go with this, but I love this concept of imprinting. So when you may have heard that when we live a healthy way, and this is so important for us in our program, is when we live in a healthy way, we're actually improving not just our children, but our children's children, right? So there is a genetic component, and it's not the way we normally look at genetics. So we look at genetics when we talk about fertility, and we think about things like Down syndrome, which is trisomy 21, 3 of the chromosome 21. So we think about that. But what I'm talking about is basically methylation issue, for example. So when we're talking about imprinting, when we are healthy, let's go the other way. When we're unhealthy, we don't have the appropriate biochemistry in our body from our nutrition, for example, or a supplementation to be able to turn on and turn off genes that are going to be expressed in a healthy way, right? So we have genes that we want turned on to express positive. I don't even want to talk specifics because we'll get in biochemistry. It'll be too much. We turn on things in our body and to express health in some ways. And if those turn on things are turned off, we don't express that health. Okay, so then we have a sub-health condition. Same thing, there are some things where we want them turned off to express health. So we want them left on. Okay, so frequently, well, in our body, what drives that are these components like methylation. So just real quick, methylation is basically taking a group, it's a carbon and 3 hydrogens, and putting it on a substance to make it active, to turn on that switch or turn off that switch. That's all it does. So it's basically, and we get that from our nutrition. Okay, and so we get from our B vitamins in particular. We talk a lot about folic acid. There's some controversy about methylated folic acid, whether you should take it or not, and we can talk about that too if you'd like. So ultimately, both mom and dad have to have that imprinting. So those genes, methylated, we'll just talk methylation, appropriate for health. And so you can have an overexpression or underexpression with that switch that might go on or off. So it's not just that mom and dad have to have normal expression. Mom and dad both need normal expression. These are not measurable, okay? But I would like to say, like, a lot of DNA fragmentation, so this is an advanced semen analysis test that is done for male factor infertility, is directly related to methylation disorder. Directly related. So when we have the mom and the dad, they have to be in that healthy expression of that. And we do that through diet, lifestyle, stress even. Stress can change and disrupt our methylation simply because we need those methyl groups to make things like serotonin that we're burning off because we're stressed or anxious or depressed. So there's stress and nutrition. We put those two things together. Let's just talk about those two. We don't have to go further. Mom and dad both need to have appropriate, healthy methylation, or else what happens is there's something called imprinting when there's even if mom is overexpressing and dad is underexpressing, it doesn't even have to be the same. It can be, one can be up, one can be down. They don't equal each other out. They both have to have healthy expression, or else what happens is imprinting is an epigenetic change. You're not going to see it in your chromosomal analysis. You're going to see it in the fact that epigenetically, it's going to be expressed poorly, such as autism, ADHD, ADD, anxiety, depression. All of these are directly from imprinting, which is something you don't see. But imprinting can impact a number of generations. So we need to stop that somewhere. And I'd like to stop it now.
I'm with you. Here, here, indeed. Interestingly enough, I read that your grandmother determines your epigenetic genre, to speak to what you're saying. And there's
Yeah.
the idea of methylation. Over 50% of people do not methylate appropriately. So, dramatic player. Also, great example of you saying we kind of got to turn on the right switches in the body so the Christmas tree lights up. And guess what? The environment is rich to get pregnant then. A couple of questions that people asked me when they knew I was going to have you on,
Yeah.
and it was from a female. I've had 2 miscarriages. What are my
Mm.
percentage chances of getting pregnant after miscarriages?
Okay, so that's a really wonderful question. And I'm going to speak from the conventional standpoint first, and then we're going to go from there. There is actually something in conventional medicine where if you've had 3 miscarriages in a row, we put you in a certain category of a diagnosis that you are in increased risk. I will tell you, those of us that have a heart and soul in medicine don't want to wait for a third. So we usually at your 3rd miscarriage, you are lined up to get a whole bunch of blood work done. We're looking for bleeding clotting disorders, MTHFR. We're looking for factor V Leiden, protein CNS deficiencies. So we're looking at, which all may or may not make sense to people that are listening, but we look at a whole bunch of things. And then sometimes that means you take a baby aspirin while you're trying and while you're pregnant. Sometimes it means other things. Okay. So that is our conventional medicine model. Okay. Now, what has happened, also conventional medicine, but it's a very small group. I think it's Dr. Alan Beer. I hope I didn't get that wrong, but I can find it for you. Basically, he is he has a book. I think it's called "Is Your Body Baby Friendly?"
Mm.
And he's I think an immunologist. There's a whole bunch of our autoimmune factors at play and inflammatory factors that are coming in. And now we're talking about like interleukins, and we're looking at so we're looking at really deep-seated inside what's going on with your body. And now a lot of these people are put on really high-dose steroids as anti-inflammatory in order to get you optimized, because we are seeing an increased risk or increased miscarriage rate. I don't actually know what it is now. When I was in clinic, it was 1 in 4. And that can be a chemical pregnancy. You know, you didn't know that you were pregnant, or it could be 6 weeks. It can be early. A lot of them are that we attribute 95% of them to genetic issues, which could be imprinting. It doesn't have to be chromosomal. Okay. So, so when it comes to, and it's so funny because when we first started our programs, I didn't think that I wanted to work in this area of people that had multiple miscarriages, because I know this work of, and we don't do all this testing to start, and I don't want to waste people's time. And we can frequently go that direction. We're reversing those people, because so now I love them. And we are taking a lot of them, because people that have had multiple miscarriages, their stress level is through the roof. And so now that means their cortisol is through the roof. So they're having more problems with their hormonal balance. So it's really detrimental. And the stress and inflammation, I'm worried about your risk of autism and I shouldn't bring that up, because there is no relationship. I just to be very clear. There's no relationship with miscarriages and autism. There's no relationship with that. Okay. In my head, I start thinking about the stress that people may experience. And now I worry about stress being one of those inflammatory or metabolic factors that I want to reverse. So we've taken those people with open arms, because we're getting them in their conscious and subconscious mind. So they go in our higher level programs, because we need to break down some of those baby blocks. We do biofeedback, and we do hypnotherapy to help people understand that they can have a healthy baby, because they get in that spot of really being concerned. Oh my gosh, is this ever going to happen to me? And the fear and the sadness that happens with a miscarriage, it is absolutely, it's undeniable. You can't measure it against anything. It is a loss. It is a loss of a human being. It is a death in your family, and it's a death of a child. And so that level of stress, even when it's early, as soon as you're pregnant, you have these dreams and these aspirations and these thoughts about what this baby's going to be. And then you lose that opportunity in that moment. It's scary. So So that was a big, long-winded answer to say it is not to be taken lightly. There are a lot of things that we do in the conventional medicine space to assess whether there's something you need. They are treatable. They are reversible. You don't have to necessarily go through convention. If you were with me in our program and we found that that became still an issue after a certain amount of time, we would talk about where do you need to go and who do you need to see. Those specialists, the wait list is 6 to 12 months to get in with them. And that tells you the demand. That tells you how high of a problem this is now with people that are having these miscarriages. These miscarriages are happening in the second trimester. They're happening, later and later. It's not good. So we need to change that now. So we are now inviting people that have had losses. We just know we want you to have a certain level of care in our programs when you're in that space, because we really need to make sure we can help your nervous system regulate to accept and receive that you're going to be able to achieve this baby.
Great, because it's a great answer, because there's a lot of ladies who ask that question. So we know that lifestyle, environment is an issue. 75% are obese or overweight, 42% are obese. That said, what percentage of weight loss, male or female, let's couple them together, needs to occur to increase the incidence of pregnancy?
Fertility. Yeah. So 10 to 20% is the conventional medicine rule. Okay. And for us, it's not really about, we have not had anyone morbidly obese in our program yet. We've had overweight people, and people lose weight. Everybody loses weight with us, so I don't really worry. And we make sure it's not a weight loss program and people aren't taking it as a weight loss program, because we don't want that mindset with your food. We don't want, because it can become an unhealthy mindset. We really want to nourish your body. So the real underlying issue is where is the weight? Is it central? Because it's more inflammatory. So that's going to be an issue. So, and our program does address central weight. We address cortisol, which is also central weight. But also with that whole anti-inflammatory diet and reversing insulin resistance and sugar issue, it is not a problem as long as you are getting into these programs. Now, that being said, if somebody is morbidly obese and they want to have a baby, remember, it didn't take us 2 months to get in this space. It's not going to take us only 2 months to get out of this space. It's like anything else in functional medicine. It took us a long time to get here. So we need to have a conversation about what does that really look like so that we can manage expectations appropriately. If somebody is 35 and they're morbidly obese and they think that they need to have a baby right now because they're 35, I want to really counsel them about looking at being 36 and really taking that year. Because 36 doesn't bother me, 42 doesn't bother me, 46 doesn't bother me. Your age doesn't bother me. It really doesn't. What bothers me is the healthy state of your body when you're trying to conceive. And if I say, yeah, as long as you're losing weight, you're fine. Yeah, you may be, depending on the individual situation. I don't want a blanket statement that, because everyone's an individual. But if you're morbidly obese, we need to say, what does this really look like in timeline? When did this start for you? When do you remember last being healthy? Were you 16 and now you're 35? We want to make sure that that's 20 years of living like this. So how long are we realistically going to have to do this? I want to manage your expectations so you're not watching that urine dipstick once per month to say, am I pregnant? And make you more anxious when it's not realistic. Let's get you healthy. Let's do it the right way. We'll hold your hand the whole way through, and then we can get you to that goal.
Let me list some contributing factors for female. It's not picking on them, but female. And stop me if I miss something. Smoking.
Yes.
Alcohol, excessive, of course.
Yes.
Mercury exposure.
Yes.
Body fat. Do you want to define body fat? Do you want to say visceral fat?
Yeah, it's central obesity, like around the belly for people that don't know. Yeah, that's basically what we're looking at more than anything else.
Subcutaneous and visceral. Nutrient deficiencies, vitamin C, zinc, B12, folic acid, selenium, iron.
All of those.
All above. Inability to methylate.
Yes.
PCOS, insulin resistance, endometriosis, obstructions. One that we haven't talked about, celiac disease and non-celiac gluten sensitivity.
Yeah. Would you like to? We can.
Let's go. Let's do it.
All right. So Celiac for sure. B12 is a massive issue when it comes to infertility, if you have a B12 issue, as well as when it comes to neurodevelopmental disorders. B12 deficiency is correlated. Also, spina bifida. So think about all of these factors. So when you have celiac disease, there is an issue across the board. These are B12 deficient people. So definitely, what can we do about it? Treat your celiac, to be incredibly compliant when it comes to your nutrition, your diet, be well educated in that space, probably B12 injections, check with your doctor. Depends on where things are for you. And then there are ways to get methyl B12, methylcobalamin injections. They don't all have to be non-methylated, depending on what your needs are. So you can get those. Now, non-celiac gluten sensitivity, absolutely. Let's just make this simple. When you have a gluten sensitivity, that means you have an inflammatory reaction. That inflammatory reaction is going to be causative when it comes to infertility. So we can go into mechanisms of non-celiac if you want. How gluten can kind of sneak in between. There's that tight cellular junction in your gut, and then what happens is that gluten kind of sneaks in and it gets into your system. So the best way I like to put this is mouth to anus is an external organ, right? So your GI tract is an external organ, which means it's not clean. But outside of that, inside of your body tissue, it's clean. It's clean, it's pristine. Your body, your immune system is absolutely protecting it. So what happens when that mouth to anus tube gets a leak in it is that whatever's in that mouth to anus tube is going to leak into that squeaky clean environment inside of your body, and it's going to mount this inflammatory attack. And we know that gluten does that. And so that is our response. So I prefer people to be gluten-free camp. The gluten we know is added to everything in this country. I did go to Europe with my family last summer, and I did have some bread there, but it didn't bother me in the least. And I came home and I cleaned it back up, but I heard great things. So I wanted to give it a go. I was in Paris, and how do you not?
I hear you.
So yeah, that's on occasion, but I also wasn't trying to get pregnant, and I don't have any illness or anything that is at that moment. So it's, when we get all cleaned up like this, when we're in this space and we're doing all of the right healthful things for us, there's room for that. Maybe not when you're trying to get pregnant, or maybe when you're trying to get pregnant, depending. If all you can do is dream about French toast, then, at some point in time, we have to let you have a piece of French toast, or else you're going to obsess about French toast, and that's going to let something else go off the rails. So, 80-20 rule.
All right, I'm with you on that. Here's one that I was saving. The gut to fertility connection, or the gut to fertility axis, allows for the regulation of sex hormones.
Yes. Yes.
Estrogen.
Yeah.
Gut to autoimmune, because imbalances in the gut microbiota will lead to inflammation. And didn't you say that one of the biggest problems you have for your inability to get pregnant is inflammation? Leaky gut or an increased intestinal permeability allows toxins and bacteria to enter the bloodstream, potentially triggering systemic inflammation and immune responses that can impede the reproductive function. And isn't that sort of a miscarriage? With the autoimmune, your body getting confused and attacking yourself. So what's interesting is what's in our gut is a single layer cell, human sewer, away from everything else, and it's protecting us from a prospective baby. So let's really run with this, because I'm a gut guy. Let's talk about the gut to fertility axis just a little bit before we
I'll talk about my favorite parts, and then you talk about your favorite parts, and we'll put them all together.
All right. And then we have a plan for everybody. We're going to close with a plan. That sounds great.
Okay. All right. That sounds wonderful. So really what I think about most when I think about gut and fertility balance for hormones. So there are specific microbes in our gut that are responsible for basically making and balancing our hormones. But in addition to that, and that's really important to know, I think there are 60. I think there are 60 bacteria in particular that are hormone gut regulators. The other thing that I like to think about is, what about our whole portal system? What about how, so our liver, how are we detoxifying what we need to detox? So beta glucuronidase. So when we look at how are we, it's not just about gut bacteria. There's so much when it comes to our gut. Acid-base balance in our stomach. Let's start there. And then I'll go to, see, I'm all over the place because I love this one. So think about acid reflux. When we are pregnant, we frequently feel more acid reflux, but we have hypochlorhydria. We have a lower stomach acid. Why is that? So what happens with our stomach is we have to have a certain concentration of acid in order to close the little sphincter at the top of the stomach to prevent us from having acid in the esophagus. So that's our feeling of reflux right there. So we need to have enough stomach acid to be able to close that lower esophageal sphincter so that we can digest appropriately, and then we wouldn't have that acid reflux. The other thing that we need from that, for that strong concentration of acid, is that's going to allow our pancreas to release digestive enzymes. And if we don't have that high concentration of acid to release the digestive enzymes, we are not going to digest the food that we ate, which is then going to be solid, putrefy, rot in your gut, causing more inflammation, more of an imbalance in your microbiome, more problems of dysbiosis, abnormal gut health. So that I think we need to really talk about is this acid reflux piece. So the first thing I say, if you have acid reflux, we manage it differently in pregnancy. And I send you back to your OBGYN during pregnancy. We don't manage in pregnancy. We do have a pregnancy support program, but we don't manage your care. But when you're trying to get pregnant, first thing I want you to do is try apple cider vinegar in the morning to be able to see is it going to make you feel better or is it going to make you feel worse? Scary to someone who has acid reflux to say, I want you to try apple cider vinegar. And they're scared to try it. I'm like, just try it one morning. And they're surprised because the majority of people with acid reflux have hypochlorhydria, low stomach acid. So we need that fixed so that we can digest appropriately, so we can get the nutrients in our body, so we can have appropriate methylation, so we can have our healthy baby. Okay, so there's one aspect. Okay, let's go back to the liver. So when we're talking about those healthy microbes in our gut, they're very responsible and resourceful when it comes to helping eliminate those excess estrogens, for example, or our toxic imbalance of our hormones. So we have to count on this relationship in our GI tract, so our liver and gut relationship, to be able to appropriately remove the excess estrogens, for example. These estrogens could be ones that we've made, but what we frequently do when we have this dysbiosis is we recycle our estrogens. So what happens when we have recycled estrogens? Our recycled estrogens mean that our estrogen is high, progesterone is low. So we have an estrogen excess, and we end up with something called estrogen dominance. What is estrogen dominance related to? PCOS, endometriosis, unexplained infertility, fibroids, PMDD, we can go on. So heavy menstrual periods that are debilitating with pain can be excess estrogen. But so can light spotty periods, because that may be indicative of anovulation, not ovulating. So we need to make sure our gut is balanced, because we can do everything under the sun. You can go get whatever medication that you want to try to induce ovulation. But if we're going to recycle for an imbalanced hormonal state, then you are at an increased risk of issue, not conceiving or miscarriage. So we want to correct that as well.
I love it. Anything gut. I mean, I love the whole conversation, but it's fascinating, the gut to fertility axis. And the idea of the gut fertility axis is really the gut to liver axis, that bidirectionality between the two, because there's two pathways in the liver that break down estrogen, and whatever filters through the liver has got to go through the bloodstream, which is going to get through the gut. And it is a full body concept. There's not usually one issue that's causing infertility. It's a full body. And you're bringing in, it's boys and girl, you're chomping at the bit. I feel it. I feel it. Come on, go. Come out of the caddy. Let's go.
All right. So I'm a big genetics person. In my last life before this, I ran a medical affairs department at a laboratory, and I built a PGX, a pharmacogenomics test. So I'm a huge pharmacogenomics fan. So I don't know if I ever told you that. So I'm huge in looking at what are your genetics and what does that mean. So there is a gene called COMT. or COMT. And so I like to know if you know your COMT status, because this is a gene that is responsible for breaking down catecholamines, and also it's a player, that and a cytochrome P450 or two, that are players in metabolizing your toxic estrogens. So frequently I can see it. I can see it in my daughter has she's a slow COMT. So that means that she has excess dopamine prefrontal cortex that comes with emotional dysregulation issues. Okay. But it also, I watched her when she was 10. She wasn't precocious puberty, but she started her period young. She started breastfeeding young. She was a little chubbier. And so I thought, and she was super smart. These kids are off the chart smart. And so I thought, I bet she's a plus plus. And so she's got two methionines, no valines. And so she's a slow metabolizer. So as soon as she started her period, I put her on thiandolol methane, indole 3-carbinol, and sulforaphane. And so her mood changed instantaneously. I'm talking about my one child. I mean, I can't say this for everybody, but she slimmed down. Her behavior was better. She slept better at night. She didn't have as much rumination. So this gene is so important, because when I see people come in now with infertility, I frequently want to know, were you a chubby kid? Were you a chubby kid where everybody else wasn't chubby in the household, kind of a thing? How were your grades in school? And now they might have been really bad grades, but you were too smart to pay attention. And that could be, so I have to diligently dig a little bit into those people. But if I don't have their genetics in front of me, then I get a general idea, and I want to detox you. So if you are a COMT, slow metabolizer, I have a certain supplement that you get put on, period. Just so that we can make sure that we're helping boost your body, because otherwise that is one of those factors. We have a few genetic factors that are implicit in infertility that we must be paying attention to, because we're way too, our infertility rates are too high. So it is something that we need to address. We need to consider if we need to add that extra supplement so that we can get you ahead of the game a little bit in your own fertility journey.
Absolutely. This has been great. I mean, I've got 20 more questions, which really begs for the idea of a part 2, which we're definitely going to schedule. Real quick, how can they get in touch with you?
Oh, thank you so much for asking. So if you go to denovofertility.com, that is our website. And then we're also on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. We're on Instagram, we're @denovo_fertility. We're Denovo Fertility Community on Facebook. And if you just follow us along there, you can find us along there. If you don't mind, I'm going to share, I have a television show that's called The New Health that just aired August 18th. And so we talk with thought leaders in the space of revolutionizing healthcare and how we can make change, not just in infertility, but across the board. I hope to see you there sometime soon. I hope you come on with me. So I would love to have you. Let's talk about that too. And so that's on nowmedia.tv/the new health. We've shown for 2 weeks so far, and we're just rocking and rolling. We've got some great guests coming on. And if anyone's interested in other areas as well, please watch.
I'm Dr. Rob Silverman. I got Jessica Preston. Proven Health Alternatives, always yours in health.